Hi, my name is Jennifer Rose Asher, and I recently published my memoir, Journey to My Daughter. This is a story. It's my story with my husband of our miscarriages, traveling around the world to try to find a child, and eventually the adoption of my daughter, Hillary, with the help of Virginia Frank and Adoption Choices of Oklahoma. It reads like a novel. It is not a how-to book in any way. However, as I've been marketing the book, one question has come up more than any other. People keep asking me, how did you talk to your kids about their adoption? Which I found a little interesting. It's not really covered in the book in any way. But when people asked me, I remembered that ironically, I talked to my kids by writing them a book. So this was the original Journey to My Daughter. It's a book that I wrote for my daughter, pictures and everything. I had this made when she was less than a year old. I used to read it to her when she was a baby. So people ask me, well, why did you do that? Why did you write a book? There were a bunch of reasons. First of all, I thought it was really important that my kids knew their adoption story from the time they were very, very young, so that they never remembered a time when they didn't know their adoption story. It takes away the stigma of adoption. It made it so that my kids just knew they were adopted. It was something they knew about themselves in the same way that they knew they had blue eyes or that they were good at soccer. So I just wanted it to always be a part of who they were. I wrote their story because I really wanted to acknowledge their birth parents. I talk about their birth parents in a very positive way, that these birth moms just found this child in their tummy and they knew they couldn't take care of the child and wanted to find that child's parents who could take care of them in the best way possible. When children don't know the story of their adoption, almost always they will make up a story. They will create a story in their head about, and you never know what that story might be. It might be that their birth mother was a princess and the king didn't want her to have a child yet. It might be that her birth mother's in jail and needs help, and this child should go out and try and help the birth mother. So by always knowing their story, they didn't ever have the opportunity to kind of create this story that had no basis in reality. It also gives them a lot of self-esteem because my books really focused on the fact that this was a child that was very, very much loved, that not only did we as their adoptive family really love them, but also their birth parents really loved them. I wrote it down in a book because it created a constant. This is a solid, constant thing, something they could go back to over and over again. The story never changes. My daughter is now 20, and she frequently yells at me because I'll be telling a story about something that happened when we went to the store yesterday, and I'll forget a word, or I won't recall the story exactly as it happened. The nice thing about this is their adoption story, which is so important, stays exactly the same every single time. Another nice thing about having it in a book is that they had this book in their room. So as they got a little older, they could go through and look at the pictures and see a picture of their birth mom and see a picture of Virginia and remember, this is what happened to me. And then as they got a little older, they could read the story to themselves. So if they ever got a little insecure or started feeling like, wow, my family doesn't look like me, maybe my family who looks like me really didn't want me, they could go back and reassure themselves, even if I didn't happen to be around at that moment, by reading their own story. It also created an open discussion. They knew this was something we were willing to talk about. So anytime they had questions, they would bring me the story and say, can we read my book? And I'd say, sure. And I'd read them the book. And then if there was a question at a certain part, they'd say, you know, Mom, why was that? What happened there? And even though this book was written for a baby, it still applies today. My daughter at 20 can still go back and know her story from reading this book. So that's why I wrote them this book. That's why I did it when they were very, very young, as soon as I possibly could. And in my next video, I'm going to talk a little bit about how I made the book.